In today's video, we're going to finish up our scene, but first let's look at this great ad. Alright guys, welcome back. This is the last video in this series of creating the dining room scene project. So first thing I want to do is I want to go here and save my last file. Call it scene.blend. As you can see right here, you see the other files that we created in videos in the past. I'm going to go ahead and save this out, and from here this is the file we're going to put everything together from. So now what I want to go in here is I want to go into link, which basically links an existing copy of a model. It also allows us to make edits, as you'll see, whereas a pen actually makes a copy of it. So if I change the original, it doesn't inherit or update the linked file. So we're going to use link for these. And what I want to go in here and do is look for my collections, and I'm going to bring in one model at a time. I'm not necessarily going to do it in any particular order, but you'll see right now I'm bringing in the walls and floors, but I mistakenly brought in the cutter, which is that little box. I don't need it, so we'll just select it and delete it. That's going to show the opening for the hole. I'm going to go to material view, and what I want to see is I want to see if my materials and everything copied over here. Good news is yes, they do. When you have a linked file, it's pulling it from that floor walls blend file that we created in videos a few weeks ago. So I'm coming in here, I'm going to add this into a collection. Some of these things in my outliner. I'm putting lights with lights, cameras with cameras, and my objects, which will represent the things that I link into the scene, into one collection. So it's just easy to keep up with. You'll also see why we use collections in the previous videos to put everything in. Makes it very easy for us to grab one thing and it inherits everything else that comes along into the import or into the linking here. I'm just making some adjustments to my camera. Just to get most of the scene in the shot. So I'm using a little bit wider aperture here, 64mm, but I want it still kind of close in so you can see some good detail. And as you'll see, I'll tweak and change as we go along. So now what I want to do is come in here and link another file, and I'm going to come back out here. I'm going to link in the chair. So I'm going back out to, there's a chair.blend file. I'm double tap it in there, and I'm looking for collections. There it is, and I want the model.chair collection that we had made in the previous video. And as you see, when we bring it in, it's linked, but it's locked, so I have to right click on the name in the outliner. First of all, let me put it in my object collection. Okay, now I'm going to right click and move everything in here in the right place. I'm going to right click, go to library override, make selected. So I'm going to override the selection here where I can move it around and stuff. It doesn't, I'm not editing the model because you edited in the original file. So what you'll see as we move along in this video is I make some changes to some other items like the floor and the table, and you'll see that this file will read the data. Let's say I could have that model linked to like 20 different files at the same time. And every time we pull it up, you'll see the changes we made from the original. This is the benefit and the power of this. It's reading the data that is appended to the file, or linked to the file, I should say. Now I'm coming back in here. I'm going to add in the next model. And I'll bring in our table, and you'll notice that some things are to scale, some things are not to scale. I really don't know why, but it doesn't matter. We'll do the same thing here, and we're going to move some stuff around anyway, so. It's just that artist view that I have, that as soon as I see something, I just want to tweak it. Try to get a really nice composition. So we're going to do some changes in here. So what I'm doing now is I'm coming in, I'm making some selections because that table is big in terms of the proportion of it to the rest of that room. It's a little large, but right now I'm just trying to get it sized in the right place. And if you notice, my chair is like super small. definitely not scaled right. So let's just bring up the chair, and I'll probably end up doing this a few times. I just want to get it close to start out with. And I'm looking at that bottom line right there, which is the floor. It's the top of the floor. So I'm aligning in the bottom of the feet of the chair with the top of the floor. So it doesn't look like the geometry is eating down into the floor, because that'll clearly look fake if we don't get that right. It's just easy to do if you go to an orthographic view and look at it. Front, back, side, whatever. You can see. You'll see I use orthographic view a lot of times to line things up. So right now we only have one chair here. We're gonna have a total of 4, but right now I'm working on proportion of things. I'm just kind of scaling some things up and scaling some things back down. If you notice, this chair and the table still look fairly large in proportion to the room. So I'm gonna scale it down a little bit. It still looks a little small, but we'll deal with it later. That's tweaky work, as they say. We'll tighten it up later. And now let's get the chair a little bit more centered on the middle of that table. So I'll hide the room and the walls, go to a top ortho view, and then I'm just kind of eyeballing it along. I don't care if the chair is pushed into the table, like pushed up to it or not right now. We'll do that here in a minute. I might as well go ahead and do it anyway. All right, so I just got this one, and I want my chairs to be similar when I duplicate these chairs, but I want them to be a little random because that makes it look more realistic. You want a little bit of imperfection. You want everything to be so precise because it looks fake. Okay. So now I'm making a duplicate of the chair. I'm not making an alias. I'm actually making a copy of the chair. So in terms of Blender, this is a new model, but it is still linked to the original. So if I change that original file, it will inherit the changes in every copy that I have in this file because they're linked, if that makes sense. Okay, so I'm just gonna rotate that one around by 180, get it into place, and then I'm gonna do this one as well. I could have used the spin tool to make this a lot quicker, but I did this on purpose because I wanted a little bit of variation in my chairs in terms of how they were placed. And most of it is like they're further into the table than others. I didn't rotate them or anything, but definitely could have. All right, let's look at material preview here. This is looking better. That window hole looks pretty massive, but we'll deal with it, like I said, when we tweak it. Let's go in here and bring in the next model. I'm going into collections, and I want the light fixture. So there it is. And I need to move that in the outliner to the proper collection, which is my objects collection. And then I need to override the selection so I can move it up. And right now I'm just kind of moving it up on the Z-axis, and I want the base plate where it hooks into the ceiling. I want it to run flush with the ceiling. And in this mode, I can't really see it. So what I'm going to end up having to do is go to material preview or look dev mode and look for the shadow that's going to tell me, as you see right here, how close I am to getting it flush with the ceiling. I don't necessarily want it to eat into the ceiling. I just want to get it as flush as possible, right? And we also know that this light is off center from the table, and I've kind of got the table and chairs like I want them. So the best thing to do next is to hide the walls and the floors, because that was all one model. I'm gonna go back in, select my light fixture, and then I'm just gonna move it around in top ortho to match a relatively centered view here. It doesn't need to be perfect. Don't rack your brain over making sure it's pixel perfect. It just needs to be close. And you'll see why. When we get the camera in and get the scene in, this light, you're not even gonna notice much of this light at all. We modeled enough of it to have it there, and it'll add to the scene, but it's not gonna be, by no means is it gonna be the main thing. So now I'm gonna bring in the flowers in the vase. Yet again, because we built it this way, I'm looking for my collections. And I'm gonna select this collection here and import it, or I should say, let me be specific, link it, not import it, but link it in. And notice it's kind of big, because I think the only thing we measured on this one was the plate, but it's bringing it in very large. So at this point, I'm not even concerned about that. I'm just going to bring it in and just scale it as needed. So I'm bringing it up, I'm getting it flush with the table, and I'm just going to scale it down. And we can change it if I'm not happy with the size in which I scaled it later. Like I said, we'll just scale everything up either offline or I'll do it later on. Right now I'm just trying to get everything in the shot and composed together to make the camera shot work. So there's the vase and the flowers. And what's nice about this, if you remember when we made this, the vase basically was like two pieces. It was like that little dish below it, and then it was the flower vase itself. But when we bring it in a collection, it brings everything at the same time. Now let's bring in the windows and the blinds. Same thing. There was a window frame, then there was a window glass, and there was a little locking mechanism, then there were the blinds. By putting this in a collection and linking it all as a collection, it brings in everything that's connected to this. And it's all parented and all just nice. So I'm bringing this in. I did not measure the hole in the wall when we made it because we made that model first. But hey, this is good that you're seeing this because this is easy to fix. I'm just gonna bring it up and notice my windows and my blinds just aren't high enough. So what I did is offline, I went ahead and I just scaled them up on the Z-axis. Bam, no problems. No weird stretching or nothing like that. So we're good. So now I'm gonna go in and bring in an environment texture, which is called an HDRI. And I've got a bunch of them here on my system that I'm working from. And I'm just gonna try different lighting scenarios because I wanna bring in some ambient light into the room using the HDRI to help with some of the more realistic bounce lighting. And then I wanna bring in a primary light. But first, let's get rid of this lamp here, the default lamp. And I made a lights collection, and now I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna bring in a sun lamp, which I technically could have taken the light, that point light that was in there and converted it to a sun lamp, but just like the cube, you know, a lot of times we just got in the habit of deleting it and then putting it right back. So you guys can have a little laugh at my expense on that one. But I'm bringing in a sun lamp, and what I want to do is I want to bring it up just so I can see it. It could have stayed down there on the floor because the light doesn't matter. And I'm just changing the angle on this manually just to see where my light's kind of coming in at. And I'm trying to get it to look like it's coming through those windows back there. So I'm just kind of playing with on the Z-axis. I'm just kind of rotating it around till I start getting some light emanating from those windows there. And then I'm gonna crank up the strength. I usually don't crank up the strength any more than probably 12. But in this case, because we got the windows and the blinds, I really want to kind of punch through there and show you that way. Right now, what I'm doing is I moved over to the floor. I noticed in the last shot that the floor looked a little muddy. So what I'm doing is I went back and I opened up the floor dash walls blend file. I'm no longer in the scene file. I'm in that original file, and I'm making some changes to the shader of the floor. If you remember, we had pulled that in with Blender Kit, but I'm going in and manually making some tweaks on it. So when this sunlight hits that floor, I want two things to happen. One, I want the planks of the floor to be narrower and smaller, as you see in the scene right now. And I want the roughness to be lessened in the floor so that you can see a nice reflection off of the floor, so the floor looks clean. And what I mean by clean is in like mopped or polished or something like that. I don't want overkill, but you'll see I go back in there a couple times and play with that. Right now I'm changing the strength of the HDRI. I'm bringing it down. I also noticed the same issue with the table. So just like before, I load the table file, the original one, and I'm coming in here in the shaders because yet again, this was a Blender Kit material, which was great, but it's just not quite punchy enough with that lighting in here. And what I'm showing you now is you can go back to the original file, make edits. So I'm gonna bring in a math node. I'm gonna change the mode to multiply, and then I'm going to crank it down to make that table kind of shiny, like it has a lacquer on it or furniture polish on it, so that when our sunlight comes through that window and hits it, it'll be subtle, but it'll pop just a little bit more. What I want to do is I now want to save that file, and now I'm going to come back in my open recent. I'm going to go back to my scene file. And now here's the finished product. Bam. You've learned linking. You've learned how that works and all that stuff. If you like this, like and subscribe. We are done with this project. You guys have done a phenomenal job. I'm going to come up with a few days for the next thing, and we'll see you then. Take care.